Dr. Krauser, it's good to be here again. I have a quick agenda up here. I'm not going to spend too much time. Dr. Krauser had asked if we could do this as a regular update to the board on a monthly basis. And we're going to try and stick to a format. So I'm going to kind of breeze through the format. It's going to be a general overview. We're still getting mobilized. So today on the agenda, we're going to do an overview of the design process. Now, this isn't something I'm going to do every month, but I want to make sure everybody's kind of speaking the same language and on the same terms as to what the process is as we go through it. We'll do a regular design process, design progress update. We'll give schedule updates and we'll give budget updates. So as far as the design process, I put together this graphic slide along with some of my coworkers. When we talk about the design process, we talk about it in terms of phases. And it goes through schematic design, design development, construction documents, bidding, permitting, construction administration, and post-construction. Each one of those have very different roles as far as what we're trying to accomplish in those. And as far as the focus of who we're coordinating with and what gets produced in those phases is very different. So I'll just do a quick overview. This is not a detailed overview of every single step. These are kind of highlights of what pertains to the tasks inside each one. We have entered into schematic design. That's really the beginnings of the project. You're really defining the definition of the project, what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, how it needs to function. In order to do that, you need to do some groundwork. So you start with the building surveys and the site surveys. So you really kind of set your metes and bounds of your site. You get a civil engineer involved. You start executing contracts, getting all those kind of things moving forward. The building survey, that applies to the high school project, since that was defined as an ad reno. So we'll have crews going through the building, actually surveying the existing conditions and documenting it in detail. We do have existing drawings, but we still need to go through and verify that the existing drawings are accurate. In addition to that, we do a lot of verification of the program. And what I mean by that, I mean the actual spaces that are needed to make the buildings and the projects function the way you expect them to function. Whether that be a program as in, a high school program, a tech ed, and what that needs to accomplish its goals, or whether it be the amount of classrooms you have. Everything that you need inside your building needs to be inventoried, so that we're producing design options that meet the needs and final product that you desire. In that same schematic design phase, we'll get through exterior massing and concepts for the building. We'll develop floor plans in large scale for the building, not in detail, saying, okay, this is every single office in the administrative suite, but really talk about adjacencies and the way the building lays out, the way it functions, the way it feels. In addition to that, we really start the civil process in earnest. As many of you know, the civil process and the approval and review process is one of the longer timeline processes that go on through the design and development process. So we have to start that at the beginning so you can have it finish up at the time you want bidding and execution of construction contracts. In addition to the other surveys, we're going to start doing a geotechnical investigation, and we'll be doing community engagement and updates on the schematic design estimates. So I went through that one in detail because that's the one that we're going to get into over the next couple of months in more detail. As far as design development, you have a list of all the functions that are in there. Design development is really when we take that schematic design, we start defining what goes into that space. So we'll have a lot more interaction with the teachers. In addition to the teacher, student, and community engagement schematic design, we'll start getting into more details in design development as to what goes into each room. How many screens you need, what kind of cases you need. All those things with our interior design team gets discussed, and you start going through the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing coordination in that phase. The floor plans and the designs that were developed during schematic design get refined during design development. And you really, at the end of design development, don't want to be making major changes. So in those first two phases, you can come in and say, you know what, I really want to change this, or this, and it's fairly easy to do. Once you get into that construction document phase, which is the next one in the process, it becomes a lot more challenging. By that point, all the engineers have gotten their fingers into things, designs are being made, ductwork structure, foundations, everything starts getting more clearly defined and documented in that phase. Construction documents is where you actually make contract documents that get bid and put on the streets. So you'll have at the end of that, the resulting product are a set of documents that are drawings, both are all civil, architectural, interior design, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structure, any kind of geotechnical reports, hazardous material reports, and the full book specifications. So that's the result of those. At the end of each one of these three phases that I just mentioned, we do revisit the budget, and we are going to revisit the budget at certain key points during and processing those phases as we talk about particular features. The last three steps, bidding and permitting. Bidding and permitting is where you actually put the documents on the street, and you get the RFI process where contractors vet the documents, get their information to provide accurate bids. Construction administration, that's where obviously it starts coming up from the ground, contracts are executed, and the design team remains involved for that entire construction process, answering RFIs and helping to assist with direction of construction. Post-construction, I keep that in here. As many of you know that have been through building projects in the past, post-construction is still an important phase. The design team does not disappear. There are always things that are getting worked out. And, going through the warranties, going through the punch list at the very end of the project, and then coming back a year later and doing the punch again to make sure everything's still operating the way you expect it to, or your machinery is operating the hardware, those kind of items. Questions about that overview of the process? Okay. And I'm going to transition to the next slide and talk. So that's a slide we'll not review every single time. It's just an overview. What I will do, though, is just the design progress update. So in the last 2 weeks, we had 2 meetings so far. The first meeting was the design kickoff, and that was a meeting with mainly administrators. And it was talking about exactly what we just reviewed and the process we're about to embark on. I assigned homework to each one of the administrators, which included taking a look at their program. So we have spreadsheets from the several study phases that we've done on these projects, and verifying their classroom counts, their program counts, all that. I had the joy this past week with some of the administrative groups from the high school. We sat down and we reviewed that program in more detail. So Dr. Ellis, Dr. Furman were able to come in along with the rest of the administrative team and really kind of weigh in as to what the vision for the high school should be. As far as the next 2 weeks, yes, and the other thing I didn't mention there, I'm coordinating the back end of the design team with contracts, proposals, and all that, getting the design team mobilized. So again, getting a civil engineer team on board and getting that process started as early in the process as possible. In the next 2 weeks, we're going to have another set of meetings. Our task over the next month or so is really going to be focusing on the program of these buildings. So again, making sure it's the right size, the right fit, looking at the projections, the student enrollment projections, making sure that we have adequate space for future growth if needed. So that's really, we'll have 2 meetings on the intermediate school. One is coming up on Friday, and the other one's going to follow up 2 weeks after that. And we'll have a follow-up meeting on the high school program. Those meetings are set on a regular biweekly basis, and we're going to keep doing that until we get to the end of the program, then we'll transition into more schematic design. So this is also a section that if we did have updated floor plans or progress to show, we'd show it at this point. Right now, again, since we're just working through the program, it's more of a spreadsheet that doesn't really look good on the screen. Any questions on the previous meetings or the upcoming meetings? Yes.
How do requirements from individual departments get communicated to you? So, for example, I'll pick on the music people. If the music people hide from you during this process, they are not ultimately going to get what they want in the design, right? And I'm assuming that's true of all the athletic department. That's true of every other department. So, how is that through Dr. Ellis and Dr. Furman? Do you later have meetings with department heads? How does that filter out?
All of the above, yeah. Okay. So typically the way we go through this process, this first round of going through defining the program doesn't define what goes inside each program. That whole discussion about what goes inside each program has to come from department heads and educators that are using those spaces. We do that through a series of meetings. So these first rounds are just trying to define the overall, get all the pieces of the puzzle. You open up the box, you shake it out, you got all the pieces of the puzzle. How you put that puzzle together then depends on a lot of input. So once we have those spaces defined, we're going to start sitting down and having conversations about, what goes into the music suite. How much storage do you need? Are you having the students take their instruments home every night? Are they staying there? Do we need to provide safe, secure places for them? What kind of adjacencies and access do you need to get a performing arts suite? Is your current space adequate or is it not adequate? a lot of questions go in, and, we're going to end up having marathon meetings some days where it's just, every hour a new educator coming in, providing input. And then we're going to see them again 2 weeks later after we put pen and paper, and sometimes we see them 2 weeks later and we throw out everything we brought because once they saw it, they didn't like it, and we changed it. So, and I often say it's all paper until it's not. So we actually appreciate the feedback, even when it's feedback that makes us do more work, we're okay with that, because at least we're getting closer and closer to what it should be.
Thank you for that. I think that,
that piece you just mentioned about the people who use the space are the ones who have been in situations where that hasn't always been the case. So I'm pleased to hear that that's important and that's the focus, because I don't have a clue what the music department needs, and they're the ones who know. So, architects know a lot, but they might not know about what a band director needs. So I'm really, really pleased to hear that. And if I could just ask folks, when we're proceeding, if we'd use our microphones, I've had members of the public say when it's recorded they can't always hear if we're not using the microphone, and we've got a remote member this evening. So just thank you.
Any other questions on the process or the progress? Then I'm going to transition to schedule.
Seth, there is one.
Yep.
And I know this is to me, the reality check. This discussion so far is great. I like the process. I love the fact that teachers and staff and so forth are involved in this. But then there's this ugly thing looming over the top of it called the finances. How do we roll that into the discussion so that we don't get either to the point where people have expectations that can't be met because of the financial constraints, or that the whole project begins to look like it teeters on the brink of infeasibility? We're looking at financial projections time and time again that don't support this kind of construction. They simply don't. We can't resolve these budget deficits and continue to talk about layering on, in this case, potentially $110 million worth of debt in this school district. All the projections, this is not your problem, it's our problem collectively. All the projections show tax increases that are among the highest in the county and among the highest that this district has ever anticipated, on top of the taxes that we already pay. If we roll forward 10 years, we're going to have tax rates that are in fact, they will go above the current city rate. This has got to be taken into account every step of the way. Otherwise, we put our staff and our administration through hours and hours and hours of conversations without this reality check that might say you might want to roll some of this back. I'm so uncomfortable with the way this is proceeding, because we're looking at it almost like a Christmas wish list, and we're getting the kids' hopes up on this. And the kids I'm talking about are the teachers. They're looking at this as this is the way out of our current situation in a couple of buildings that need to have upgrades. There's no question about that. But this financial thing scares me. Some of us actually lose sleep over this, and that's not good. This is a seriously expensive venture that we're talking about, and I have yet to see. I'll just lay it on the line. I have not seen any analysis of the academic benefits. I've heard a lot of discussion about it, but I've seen nothing in the way of, here's the before and after when we've done projects like this in the past. We meaning you. This is what we had going in, and this is what we got for the investment. I've seen nothing like that. I've asked for costs on, for example, extending the life of the current pool. Seen nothing on that. This is the reality check. I mean, we're rolling forward like it's a done deal. We're going to do it. But we've got to take these financial constraints into account. So please help me with my anxiety, if nothing else.
A couple things to unpack there. As far as the budget and maintaining the budget, I'm going to start there. So one of the responsibilities we have in working through these projects is always looking at the budget, re-estimating the project as it stands at that point in that process, and comparing it to where we should be. So I just did this on another CTC, and we actually came in $100,000 under where we thought we were going to be. So our target was X. Where we ended up at the end of that schematic design estimation process was $100,000 under. That doesn't mean we want to spend another $100,000. That means we want to keep that to bank for the next unforeseen that comes up. They need add another storage room or something like that. So I guess as far as being the steward of the budget as we go through the construction process, we really revisit that a lot, and we pay very close attention on the bid results that are coming in for some of the projects, and reapply that and revisit it every single time we get updated information. So as far as the budget, if that is what we're aiming towards, if we're told here's the budget to accomplish this goal and here's our program, when it comes to a point where, heaven forbid, it turns out that we're $1 million over budget, and we say, okay, here's the wish list that everybody said they wanted in this program, but we realize we have to be more efficient. We'll have a conversation with the administrative team, with the educators, about how we create a more efficient project so that it can be accomplished within that budget. So that's really the process we start going through. It's not just, let's take everything everybody wants and put it into the building. It's really how do we accomplish this within the constraints that we have. So as far as setting the budget, those are constraints I'm given, and I have to rely on Mrs. Julie and her team to really say, okay, this is the budget we can afford, and we'll work within those constraints. Does that help answer some of the first part of that question?
Well, what if you find that the gap is not 1 million, it's 20 million? Then what?
Then we need to have a real conversation about how we accomplish what needs to be accomplished and how we accomplish it.
Yeah, I just think there's got to be some congruence early on so that we don't get to that point.
So the one thing I will say is I don't define the program. I try and execute what's assigned to me. So again, you give me constraints as far as a program that needs to be executed for this project and a budget. And when it comes to a point where I say the two can never come into alignment, you better believe I'm raising the red flags.
Appreciate that.
As far as the other examples of projects, I can talk to the administrative team about other projects that we have in the area, put you in contact with other boards, other administrative teams. And I think it wouldn't be, I don't think the best approach to trying to help you understand what projects can do would be for me to preach to you what happened on our past project. I think it would be best to hear it from them and their perspective. I think that's, because I can't really give you research where I've said, okay, I've increased test scores this much because we did something over at Penn Manor. But I think talking to the staff at Penn Manor will help you understand what has changed in their educational programs. And I'm just using Penn Manor as an example because that's a reason that we do the project.
Anything else for questions?
Yeah, Seth, how many of recent projects in the past, how many of, say, the past 5 years of projects you've done have gone grossly over budget?
I'm not going to lie, it has been more in the past 5 years than it's probably been in the history of the firm. And that's because of the uncertainty happening in the construction market right now. What I will say is the thing I shared earlier today about updating a schematic design budget and it being under what we expected, even though the square footage had risen. Things are changing a little bit. We see some positive market swings. So I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I'm not saying we're not going to face budget conversations on this one as well, but I'm being a little more optimistic than I was a year or 2 years and a half ago. Okay. Anything else? Then we'll just review schedule here real quick. I won't spend too much time on this. These are, the first two are the schedule that you've seen in the study process as we're going through the approval process. You're seeing a third line here. That third line is an alternate schedule for the high school project. As we started to unpack the process and how many people we would like to have conversations with, Dr. Krauser started asking, do we have enough time in this year-long study process to really vet the program properly, to really do schematic design investigation that we want to, and get everybody's input and make sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's. So this is one proposed schedule of elongating that. What we normally try and do, you can see those little orange lines, that's finishing within the summer months. What we normally try and do are finish phases within those summer months, so you're opening on a new school year. So this is one version of elongating that schematic design timeline, and I know we're investigating other options where maybe it gets elongated longer to allow for some other opportunities, conversations, and community input. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Dr. Krauser?
No, yeah, agreed. And to Mr. Sears' point, that continues to allow that constant quality control check about receiving the input, ensuring that it's matching. Elongating that also provides potential budgetary components and financial opportunities as well, as that spaces out and what does that look like as we plan long-term financially. So right now we're just kind of opening up that to see what does that look like from a realistic point of view to get all of that information. The complexities of the high school program is very different than the intermediate because each individual department has its own unique space and design. And, you know, as that first question, engaging those individual departments is an important part of that process. Yeah, thanks.
And then one of the other standard things we'll do here is just revisit the budget. The next slide is just the budget that we had established at the end of that study phase. As things change, we'll have a stock conversation about the budget. If we see, you know, I'll be noting here, if we went through the program investigation, we realized we have 6,000 square feet more than we'd expected. I may not have a number to assign to it at that point, but we're going to talk about these items as they come up so everybody can be aware. Right now, this is just what you saw from the study, and that is currently our target. Any questions? All right, that's what I got for today.
Thank you, Seth.